I'm Scott. This is Jailene, and we're Internet Safety Concepts, and we're happy to be here today talking about some important topics when it comes to today's technology. How you doing today?
I'm great. How are you?
All right, I'm doing fantastic, and we're going to talk about some important things today.
Yeah.
We have been putting together a series of videos, and we're going to continue to do that on tips and strategies. But today we're taking a little bit of a different approach.
Yes.
And the different approach is we're trying to reach as many people as we can, whether it's students, whether it's parents, and we've got some feedback that you heard from that maybe is steering the ship a little bit today on how we're going to do things. So can you share with everybody what you heard from some of the youngsters?
Yes. They want to hear real life stories and testimonies.
Okay. And that's a valuable tool. We can learn from people's positive things and from their mistakes. So today we'll share along with those things of why we think that's important. Mm-hmm. And we both have had different experiences.
Yeah.
So it's going to be, I think it's going to be an interesting one. So why don't we start off by you telling maybe, is there a firsthand story or experience or something that has influenced you on how you use social media, or something that you learned from or saw? What would you like to share?
Well, as a teenager in middle school and high school, I became addicted to Facebook and Twitter. And I know that sounds really funny to say, but it's true. Like, it was the cool thing to have a Facebook and to have a Twitter and to be on there all the time, especially at night when all your parents are sleeping and all the cool shows like Jersey Shore are on. And that was like a really big issue for me. Like, I wanted to be on there in everybody's drama, in everybody's business. And for me, like, that impacted me so much that, like, even my mom would take away my iPad and I would still make brand new Facebooks and like brand new Twitters that I thought she couldn't see. But she did. She saw them.
Well, as parents, we try to figure these things out sometimes. And now looking back, if you could talk to the younger you, why would you have said maybe that wasn't the right course of action to take?
Because it wasn't worth it. It was not.
What aspect of it wasn't worth it?
All of it. Like the hiding and lying that I was doing to just be on the social media, and honestly, the actual social media account. Okay. It wasn't worth it, only because it brought gossip, drama. Because when a young person has, the social media account, what are you doing up at midnight on your social media?
All right, fair enough.
Nothing good.
But now, is there a way that social media as a young person can be a positive thing?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm not saying to go ahead and deactivate your child's social media. However, I am saying that if you notice your child is spending too much time, and when I say too much, I'm talking about like hours on end on social media, we should have a family meeting and talk about, what are you doing on there? Can you tell me why you're so interested? I wouldn't jump straight to just taking it away.
Okay. And that's one of the things that I, through my company and presentations, I've been talking about for years, that it's not about taking devices away. No. It's not about saying you can't. Now, don't get me wrong. There's times where that's justified.
Yeah.
And there's times where that's needed. Mm-hmm. But I don't think it's our first course of action. No. And what we're trying to do with these videos, through my website, through the safety guides we've come up with, is empower good choices. And that's what we're saying. We know technology is going to be part of our lives.
Yeah.
And here we are in a pandemic, and it's how we're connecting and communicating, and it's important. But we can't drop our guard on safety.
Right.
And that's where some of the people that we have talked to, we've seen it go really bad. And it was funny because when we were trying to prep today's episode, we were trying to figure out what drives each of us. And you said something that maybe I didn't explain in our first couple episodes, why I'm so passionate about this or what I've seen. So for those of you that don't know what I've done, I'm a retired police officer, but I didn't have the typical career path. For most of my career, I investigated crimes against children until the internet came out. And for about 10 to 15 years, the last 15 years, I've dedicated trying to keep the internet safe. But the last 10 years of my police work, I was a 13-year-old girl on the internet. And I was seeing firsthand the good of what the internet can do and the fun that kids can have.
Yeah.
But I saw the real dark side too.
Mm-hmm.
And I arrested a lot of people who were hurting kids. And I saw firsthand how if we don't get control over it, that's where things can spiral.
Okay.
And that's what we don't want to see happen.
Right.
So we'll talk about whatever topic we feel is important. We'll talk about whatever topic, like today. Today is all about someone saying, hey, share some of this stuff.
Yeah.
That's why we're gearing today's show about sharing some personal stories, because we'll take any approach we can to prevent what you and I have seen. And I don't want to see that happen. So when it comes to personal stories, there's so many that I can share. Once I started my company back in 2007, I've talked to thousands of kids about this topic. And the majority of the conversations I have are really good. They will come up and say, hey, I didn't think about safety that way, or it empowers them.
Right.
But then I have the ones that come up and you could tell just need someone to talk to.
Right.
And I hope maybe these videos spark that, because you're not alone when you go through these things. There's a lot of situations that go through it. So I'm trying, as we talk about this, to figure out what to share, because it's so important. I guess for me, what I think we underestimate when it comes to what you and I have seen is how it's no longer just a 30-second, hey, see this picture?
Yeah.
Look at it, it's going to go away. It's no longer one person saying a mean comment. Like when I was a kid, if someone said a mean comment at school, it stayed there.
Right.
The next day you have to deal with it. Now, it follows us forever.
Yeah.
So before I share my story, I'm just trying to make sure that we address what we think we need to address here today.
Okay.
And maybe there's not a set script on what we're doing today, as you can see. But I think it's important for us to talk from the heart on why it's important. So if there was one situation or one thing on social media that you've seen or experienced that you would like to really let the kids know, hey, not saying you can't do it,
Right.
but you need to think about safety, because what aspect of the internet or social media would that be for you?
For me, it would be who you let follow you and who you follow back. And the reason I'm saying this is because I have had some pretty sketchy people that I didn't know follow me. And as a kid, I mean, like, not now, because now my accounts are set to private. But, you know, in middle school and high school, I would just let any random guy follow me because I wanted attention. I wanted to be cool and have all the followers that I could get. So I would let kids from other towns, other states follow me, and I would chat with them. But what would have happened if I chatted with the wrong person?
Okay.
What would have happened if I would have hung out with the wrong person that I met online?
Okay. So I'm gonna dovetail that, because there's so many safety concerns that I have because of what I saw when I was undercover. But today I'm not going to share an undercover story.
Okay.
I want to share what goes along with what you just said about being private and knowing who you're communicating with, because I've been the police officer who's worked cases where, hey, my child's missing. And the last thing we think they were doing was they were on their device talking to somebody. And I've had to help put those cases together where we try to track down someone who's been missing, who's been abducted, who we don't know what's going on.
Right.
And social media has played a big part of that. And when, knock on wood, the cases have been successful and we found those people, or we were able to prevent a situation from happening, I always try to learn from those kids on how could that have been. And almost every one of them, there's a common thread when the kids have lost control. It's not maybe their actions, but who they're communicating with.
Right.
And when you said privacy, I think that's such an important part, because countless kids have come to me and said, I didn't realize this person was 27. They told me they were 12. We started off playing a game, and then we shared our social media. And now the next thing I know, I've lost complete control. And that's something that's hard to get back. It's really hard to get back. Here's one example. There was a young man that I went to talk to one day. And at first we couldn't tell what he wanted to talk to us about, but you could tell he wanted to talk about something. And what happened was he got tricked to sharing a very personal picture of himself. And when he shared it, the person he sent it to then came back and said, I know all your parents' accounts. I know all your friends' accounts. Send me more pictures, more detailed, more graphic, or I'm going to post everything that you've said, because I've screenshotted every message you sent me, and I will share every picture you sent. So the young man's first thought was, I got to give him what he wants. I don't want this embarrassing stuff out there about me. But luckily, and we've talked about support systems, this young man had a really good friend who said, no, you got to put a stop to this. And he called the police, and the police got involved. And when I talked to him, he was scared. He was nervous. He was a young kid. And when the investigation finally started to materialize, we realized the person he was talking to was not a young kid, who we thought was a young kid. And the embarrassment that the young child went through, the humiliation, it could have been a lot worse. It was me and a couple other people we had to talk to because we were able to nip it before it got out of control.
Right.
Because someone stepped up and said, hey, don't do that. So when we share our stories, and I have a lot of kids come up to me, and again, I think the best compliment I can get from kids when I talk to them is, I never thought of it that way.
Right.
If what we talk about gets them to think about something, then man, we've achieved our goal.
Right.
Because we don't have all the answers, but we've seen so much, we don't want to see it happen. And that's what motivates us and drives us to do these videos and the other social media that we do and trying to educate as much as possible. We're not going away.
No.
We've got a lot of ideas on things we want to do, but we also want to make sure that we're communicating at a level that people understand why it's important to us.
Yeah.
And why we're going to continue to do what we do. I talk to tens of thousands of kids every school year, and it's amazing how we're getting better.
Yeah.
There's a lot of kids that are thinking about privacy. There's a lot of kids who are thinking about their future, but we're not perfect. There's a lot of parents that are getting more educated. We're not perfect.
Right.
So we talk about so many different facets of this, and we're going to continue to do that. But there's so many things there's stories that we can share and learn from. But like with my story, as a young person who went through some stuff, and you, like you said, you got nervous, you had situations go on. What would be an advice you can give somebody to say, hey, listen, if you've got something going on, here's what I think you should do?
I think I would say, well, first, look at the person's account. Right? Because if you already allow them to follow you and you guys are already chatting, it's a little late, but it's not too late. Okay. Especially if you haven't hung out with them yet. If you haven't met them wherever they told you to meet them, you're just talking to them, but the blackmail is beginning. That's when you should ask for help. My biggest advice is to ask for help.
Okay. Asking for help is tough. It's
not
always easy.
No, it's very hard.
I'm gonna agree with you 1,000%, but I'm gonna back up to a step that we need to take before that.
Okay.
We need to really start knowing who's in our world.
Yeah, we do.
We have so many people who, I don't like using the word victim, just because we all make mistakes.
Right.
And we can become the target of someone's aggression or someone's bad choices. But because we know that word, I'll say to become a victim.
Okay.
A lot of times we allow those people into our world. This young man, he allowed that person into their world. Started off on a gaming site.
Yeah.
Hey, this guy's pretty cool. We're playing a game. And then what they thought was a friendship built. So first step is when we're talking to people online, why are we talking to that person? And if you get a follow request, you get a friend request.
Yep.
And younger people might think it sounds corny. I look at it with two simple questions. Who is this person? And why are they so important? I want to communicate with them.
Right.
Because I don't know why they want to communicate with me. They could tell me what they want, but they only tell me what they want. And that's the problem we have a screen. If I could be a 13-year-old girl for 10 years of my career, and I can convince people worldwide that that's who I was, it's because I told them what I wanted them to know, not the truth.
Yeah.
And how did that happen? They let me into their world, or I let them into my world as part of an investigation. So I think we've got to really make sure we know who we're communicating with. We hear the term catfish.
Yeah.
Can you explain? Maybe some of the parents don't know what catfishing is. From a youngster's point of view, what's catfishing?
Catfishing is when you pretend to be a person that you're not. So for example, if I created an account and I pretended I was a boy named John, and I began messaging other girls or even other guys, trying, to date them or trying to just be their friend or whatever. And we created this connection or this bond or even started an online date or online relationship. And then they find out I'm just me. I'm not John and I'm not a boy and that's not my age and that's not my race and all these other things. And the biggest problem is catfishing has become glamorized in pop culture. It's a show on MTV. It's a show on TLC called 90 Day Fiancé. It's everything. Catfishing has become cool and funny and a thing that people do to get revenge on other people, but it could really mess with someone's head. It could really affect them and cause harm.
Absolutely. I can't tell you how many kids have come to me. You don't understand.
Yeah.
And that's how they start the conversation with me. I go, what do you mean? We met in a gaming site.
Yeah.
We have become such good friends. I've talked to him. I've talked to her on the phone. And I let them go through all this. And then I go, how do you know it's not me? And they look at me and go, what? I go, I can convince people via phone call that I'm a young girl. That's a piece of cake. That's
Right.
software. That's someone subbing in for me. There's a lot of different techniques I could do. Oh, I was on video with the person who was on the side of the video telling them what to say or what
Right.
to do. There's so many variables
Yeah.
that we can't drop our guard. And when kids come up and go, you don't understand, I let them vent.
Yeah.
And then I say, okay, but how do you know it's not me? You can't prove it. So we can't drop our guard.
No.
And we have to make sure that when we're doing these things and we hear these situations that arise, we learn from them.
Yeah.
And we make the best of our situation. How do you do that? We get involved, we educate parents, we talk about it ahead of time. Hey, we watch these guys talk about it. What's catfishing? If anything else they walk away with tonight, talk to your kid about catfishing and who they're talking to. It could start a really good conversation to get into how we're allowing people into our world.
Right.
And I think it's so important that we have to make sure we know who's in our world and why we're communicating with those people. Stranger walks up to your front door and says, I'm going to come into your bedroom and hang out. You're calling the cops.
Yeah.
But online, when we go on to video chats and we're just sitting there, we're bringing strangers in. And that's going to be a whole nother episode on video chats and everything like that. But we wanted to talk about this today, just to let everybody know why it's so important to us, share some stories. And I think we're going to continue that pattern of sharing stories, firsthand things, because I think it's important to learn from that. And as we wrap up here, I'll say my piece and you can say your piece.
Okay.
I want to reinforce that we're not telling everyone to stop using technology.
Yes.
We just can't drop our guard. But I also think that we have to work together, students, teenagers, and parents, that as parents, we understand safety. As teenagers, you guys understand the technology. We got to find that happy medium.
Right.
And we'll share over the course of these episodes some very great success stories. How when kids have taught their parents and talked to them, great things have happened because we get involved. That's my final note kind of thing. What would you like to wrap it up with here?
Just to emphasize again, this isn't about taking phones away or technology away and deactivating social media. This is about using social media wisely. And so if anyone has any stories they want us to share or any topics that they need to hear from us or questions, you could leave that in the comments.
Okay.
Or email us.
Yep. And the website's going to be up in a second. The best way will be drop us an email, and we'll be more than happy to address any concerns that you have. Thank you very much for your time, and as always, be safe.